Hello again. A few days ago, one of my grandsons was here and he's very interested in woodwork at the moment, especially fretwork. If you don't know what fretwork is, this is a sample. This is something I did a while back. He didn't actually do this one, but he's done quite a few other cutouts and he is very good at it actually. Now the thing is, you've got to drill little holes to get the blade through, and he wanted to borrow my electric drill, and I said to him, well, why not use my little mini drill? It's ideal for fretwork because you've got a small bit in there, and I thought this is going to be ideal for doing it. This is what I normally use. So I showed him this little drill and I explained how it worked. Here it is. You've got a little chuck here, and there's a lock-in button there, and you hold the lock-in button in and undo the chuck, which is rather tight, and you can take the bit out and put it back in or change it. It's a brilliant little tool. It's got to be about 40 years old. It wasn't mine originally, it was my old friend Mr. Fowles, and he gave it to me, and it's brilliant. I've used it all that time. You can tell how old it is because on the transformer unit it says made in Hong Kong, and if it says made in Hong Kong, that dates it quite a while ago, because it would be said made in China now, wouldn't it? Anyway, I digress. The situation is this: I was showing him the drill, and of course, lo and behold, I switched it on, dead as a dodo. And yet, earlier, a few minutes earlier, I'd used it and it was fine. And I thought, well, I'm going to have a look at this and see what's wrong with it. So I thought you might be interested just to see how to repair one if it's possible. So we'll have a start, shall we? Now, obviously, the first thing to do when you're testing electrical products is to make sure it's plugged in and switched on. It's all too easy to spend ages trying to mend something or try to find out what's wrong, and then in the end find out you haven't got the damn thing switched on. It's unlikely the fuse would have gone in the plug, especially with such a small thing as this. Most unlikely. So really the first thing to do is to check that you've got the power there. Now remember, this is only low voltage stuff, so once it goes to this transformer you've only got like 14 volts output, so it is quite safe. But as always, if you're not used to electrical products, or you don't understand them, be very careful obviously. But this is low voltage, so it's quite safe in this case. Now what I'm going to do, I've got it plugged in, I'm going to switch it on. So the power's on now here. We'll just check once more. The drill doesn't work. There's a little switch. Nothing at all. And this is connected. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the little plug out here. It's quite useful having this. And I'm going to check this to see if there's any voltage there. Now, if you've got one of these, this is a digital meter, this is the easiest option. So you just turn this, it's 14 volts, so I'm going to put it on the 20 volts. It's important to get the DC range, not the AC, because this little device here has rectified the AC to DC, so we're talking about DC volts here. So having done that, pop your leads into the little connector and we'll check to see if there's any voltage present. There you go. It's a bit intermittent because I've got a bad connection. It's showing sort of 18 volts, which is about right because there's no load on it. There you go, 17, 18, it'll fluctuate, but there is voltage there anyway, we know that. Now, if you haven't got a digital meter, because I find a digital meter is ideal for finding the voltage, then you can use an old-fashioned analog meter. This is my favourite meter. I've used these for years actually. Pop that one in there alive, and pop that one in the other side, and you should see the needle move over. There you go. That indicates there is voltage present. So we know the little mains unit's okay now, so it's got to be in the drill. Okay, so having done that, we'll just turn the power off and get that out of the way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the little drill apart and we'll have a look inside and see what's what. So first thing to do really is to take the chuck off, press the little button in, because I've got to get the ring off on the end I think. Right, this ring's obviously got to come off because it holds it together, so we'll just turn that off. Oh, it's a very fine thread, look. Okay. Right, so we've got that off. Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws in there. So we'll just undo those screws and the cover should come off then. There's nothing in it, is there really? You've got a little motor, the switch, and the mains lead, which isn't mains lead, it's low voltage, but we'll call it mains lead. I suspect it's that switch. I doubt if it's the motor, so I'm just going to use the meter here to test for continuity of the switch. Make sure the meter works, and just pop the leads on. That is really weird. That shows continuity across that switch. That is really strange, folks, because it doesn't work. See, this is where you can get confused. Now, you've seen that. Officially there is continuity across that switch. There's nothing in the circuit now, so it can't be getting a false reading. Now obviously there is another way of doing it, another way of testing if you want to be absolutely sure. And that's simple, just plug the lead back in again so it's connected. It's only 14 volts, so it is completely safe. And I'm going to use my multimeter. I'm just going to pop the one lead on one side of the motor, which I know is connected directly to this little doings here, this little connector. And the other lead I'm going to put on the one side of the switch where power should be present. And you see the meter moves across, so power is definitely at that point on the switch, on the input of the switch. If I put the same lead on the other side of the switch, you'll notice there's nothing, which indicates that the switch is dead. Just make sure the switch is turned on before you do the testing. So you can see, and it's dead there. So that switch has absolutely had it. Because it's low voltage, I wouldn't do this normally at the mains. Just pop your lead across, and away it goes. And interestingly enough, it keeps going because there's just look at that. The eccentricity of electricity. That's a good saying, isn't it? Isn't that strange? Have I got it going? Watch this. It probably won't do it again, folks. Well, things always go wrong when you're doing videos. I bet it don't work a second time. Pop that across, get it going. No, it didn't work then, see? It's just obviously just enough. Anyway, so it's definitely that switch. We won't mess about anymore. We know the switch is faulty. Right, so obviously we need a new switch, don't we, folks? So what are we going to do about it? So I've gone to my little drawer with the mini switches in. And there you can see a little box of assorted switches. Some of them, a lot of them, you'll notice got leads and connections on. They're ones that I've taken out of old things that I've dismantled. When I take things apart, I often take bits out and save them, especially little switches, because they're handy. Now that little switch there's a story to that. That's a strange little thing. You won't see many of those about. That's quite a rare object. Actually, there's another one there, look. That's actually a spare switch out of a Hoover electric drill. And before anybody tells me there's no such thing as a Hoover electric drill, yes there is. There is, because I've got one. There's one there, little solder connection. Solder connection's easy. If you haven't got a soldering iron, by the way, and you're doing a job like this, you could always use a little switch like that with tags on and put little crimp tags on instead, but it's easy enough to solder. This little box of switches has come in quite handy in the past because I've got a Hegner fretwork machine. Now the little switch went on that, and I had a look online at Hegner prices, and I was absolutely shocked to find they wanted £20 for this little switch, plus about £4 post and packing, so like £24 for the whole thing. And I thought that's ridiculous for a little switch. So I went to my little drawer here, and I found that one of these little switches was exactly the same thing. And I was able to put that in. I think I took it out of a hairdryer or something. So I repaired my Hegner almost instantly for zero cost. But in actual fact, if you look at places like CPC online, you can buy these for about £1 anyway. So how on earth they charge £24 is beyond me. It really is. I'm rambling as usual, folks. I must stop this rambling and concentrate on the subject. Anyway, we've got a little switch. Hopefully it'll work. So the next job is to solder it in place. Now I've got several different soldering irons. I've got this instant soldering gun, which is a Waller. British made, unusual these days. I don't suppose they're made in the UK anymore, if they're even made. I'm not going to use that for this job, it's mainly for bigger jobs. I've also got this one. This is one of the original irons. I've had this one for many, many years. It goes back to the 1960s. I used to use this when I was doing radio and TV servicing. It just uses a piece of coated copper wire and heats it up through the transformer. It's very good though, but again I won't use it for this job because it's a bit heavy for that. Anyway, I'm going to concentrate on this little blue one. One thing I should show you, this is a scrimper's plug. Have a look at this plug. Nothing to do with the video. If you look there, see this plug here? It's got a little neon. That's a scrimper's plug. I made that myself. I actually cut the top out of an MK plug and then put a mains neon in. Years ago this was, before LEDs and that came out. But it's quite useful because you can see at a glance that the iron's plugged in and going. And it's easy to forget it otherwise. Anyway, enough of that nonsense, folks. Let's get back to the soldering. Notice my reel of solder. Just shows how long I've had that. RS Components Limited, made in the UK. 8 ounces net. You don't get that nowadays. I've had that in stock for a long time. Oh, by the way, when you're soldering, sometimes you can use this soldering flux. This is Fluxite again. good old British make, made in England again, you see. But I don't think I need it for this particular job because the solder has got flux already inbuilt into it. The first thing to do is just to unsolder the wires off the old switch. This is pretty elementary, folks, but if I don't show you, somebody might say they'd like to see it. There we are, that's the old switch out. Pop that down out the way. The best way is to poke it through the holes on the little switch. Solder ready in the one hand, and your little soldering iron. Put it on there and warm it up. You'll see the solder starting to melt. Soldering can be a bit fiddly, folks. There you are, that's that one done. So that's both wires in now. I'll just pop that little switch in place. It'd be funny, wouldn't it, if I did all this and then found it didn't fit. One little tip, folks, when you mend something, before you put it together, if you can test it out first, save taking it apart again. Right, now we'll see. I'm going to hold the motor because when it starts, the inertia might kick it out of the thing. There you are, look. So for the sake of a little tiny second-hand switch, I've got a working drill again, hopefully. All I've got to do now is just pop it back together. We're going to have a look in this one and see if we can see anything wrong with it, shall we? I always like to see. I'll open it up. I'm just going to snip the sides off. Oh, it looks a pretty mess in there, doesn't it? Look at that. There's not much of a switch. You've got a tiny little ball bearing. There's the tags on the other side. There's the little connector plate. As you can see, it's not very positive, is it? And that's the little blade that connects. So that's it. That's what caused the problem. Anyway, we'll put it back together now, and I'll show you it working again, hopefully. Well, there you are, folks. I've got the little switch in. You can see it in the end there. And I'll switch it on, and as you can see, it works perfectly. I'm glad to get that going again, because that was my late friend of Mr. Fowles gave me that. It doesn't matter how many I've got, I would still repair it if it went wrong. I wouldn't just throw it away. Obviously, if the motor had gone, then I'd take it apart and bin it. I'd take the switch out and keep it though. I always do that. Anyway, I think that's about all for now. How to mend a mini drill. Well, how to mend a mini drill if it's just the switch that's gone. Working fine, look. About 40 years old, folks, and still going strong now. Just for the sake of a second-hand switch out of an old hairdryer. That's the way to do it. Bye for now, folks.